The obsidian arena of Nexus Prime sparkled like a vast bowl of polished darkness under the harsh white light of 3 artificial suns. From her vantage point in the diplomatic observation deck, Ambassador Lyra could see the entire stadium filled to capacity with over 300,000 spectators. The shimmering force field above kept the atmosphere breathable, but did nothing to muffle the thunderous roars that periodically erupted from the crowd. "Is it always this loud?" 12-year-old Mira pressed closer to Lyra's side, her small hand clutching at the formal diplomatic robes. Lyra placed a protective arm around the child's shoulders. "Yes, I'm afraid it is. The Dominion of Steel believes that volume equates to enthusiasm, and enthusiasm to loyalty." "They're cheering for people to die," Mira said, her voice small but clear. Lyra couldn't argue with that assessment. The girl might be young, but she possessed the sharp mind of her late father, Dr. Eric Voss, whose research on human-compatible biospheres had made the contested resource worlds habitable in the first place. That same research had made him a target of Dominion assassins 6 months ago. "They don't see it that way," Lyra explained, though the words tasted bitter. "To the Dominion, this is just efficient conflict resolution." A wry smile flickered across her face as she recalled her diplomatic training. Never had she imagined that her career would lead her to a gladiatorial arena. The fate of 3 worlds and millions of human colonists hanging in the balance because a trade negotiation had reached an impasse. Below them, arena technicians were reconfiguring the combat space, massive hydraulic platforms rising and falling to create a diverse and treacherous terrain. Holographic indicators showed zones of extreme heat, acid pools, and kinetic disruption fields, all designed to provide maximum entertainment value for the assembled dignitaries and paying spectators. The observation deck door slid open with a whisper. High Arbiter Talos entered, his chrome-plated exoskeleton whirring softly with each precise movement. The Dominion official's face remained impassive, but the slight tilt of his metallic headpiece conveyed what Lyra recognized as smug satisfaction. "Ambassador," he acknowledged with the barest nod. "I trust you and your symbolic champion are prepared for today's proceedings." Lyra stiffened. "We never agreed to make Mira a champion of any kind, symbolic or otherwise. She's a child, not a combatant. Yet you named her as your representative when you accepted our offer of trial by combat," Talos countered, his voice as smooth and cold as the obsidian walls. "The Dominion's legal archives have recorded your acceptance." "Under duress and manipulation," Lyra shot back. "You threatened immediate orbital bombardment of our colonies if I didn't agree to your terms." Talos spread his hands, the gesture almost human, if not for the metallic gleam of his artificial limbs. "The Dominion prefers efficiency in all matters. Ambassador, war is inefficient. Targeted combat is precise. 1 victory, 1 defeat, and the matter is settled." "With a child at stake?" Lyra couldn't keep the disgust from her voice. "The child remains perfectly safe in this observation deck," Talos said. "Her status as symbolic champion is merely a formality. The combatants who fight in her name are the ones who will face the consequences of defeat." Before Lyra could respond, the arena's announcement system boomed to life. A voice, like rolling thunder, echoed through the stadium. "Citizens of the Dominion, welcome to the 97th cycle of the Obsidian Trials." The crowd's roar intensified, becoming a physical force that seemed to press against the observation deck's windows. "Today's combat will resolve territorial claims to the Voss biospheres, sectors 17, 22, and 29, representing the Human Federation, a sequence of champions fighting in the name of Mira Voss." A holographic image of Mira's face appeared above the arena, magnified to colossal proportions. The girl gasped and shrank back from the window. "They're using my picture," she whispered, horrified. "Representing the glorious Dominion of Steel, the undefeated sovereign of the arena, the apex predator, The World Ender. Rulax. The arena floor split open, and a platform rose from the depths. Standing upon it was a figure that even from a distance made Lyra's blood run cold. 8 feet tall, with armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Rulax's form was vaguely humanoid but twisted into something designed purely for combat. Its head was a sleek helmet with no visible eyes, just sensor arrays that glowed a deep crimson. Multi-jointed limbs ended in what could be either weapons or hands, reconfigurable for whatever violence was required. "What is that thing?" Mira asked, her voice trembling. "Rulax is the pride of Dominion biomechanical engineering," Talos answered, before Lyra could speak. "Part biological organism, part quantum computer, part weapons platform, undefeated in 7 years of continuous combat. It has killed 3,022 opponents, without sustaining significant damage." "It's a monster," Mira whispered. "It's a champion," Talos corrected. "And it fights for the Dominion's rightful claim to the worlds your father made habitable." Lyra felt Mira tense beside her. "Those worlds belong to us," the girl said with sudden fierce conviction. "My father didn't die so you could take them." Talos's expression didn't change, but Lyra noticed his metallic fingers, flexing slightly. "Your father's research was funded by Dominion grants. The intellectual property belongs to us. Those grants were paid in full with interest when the terraforming succeeded," Lyra interjected. "As our documentation clearly shows. Documentation you refuse to acknowledge in the negotiation chambers." "Documentation becomes irrelevant once trial by combat is invoked," Talos said. "The arena decides now." Below them, the announcer continued. "First wave of Federation champions, the 16th Mechanized Legion." A massive door on the far side of the arena rolled open, and 20 combat mechs thundered into view. Each stood 12 feet tall, bristling with pulse cannons and missile pods, their titanium frames gleaming in the artificial sunlight. "Your first champions," Talos observed. "Impressive hardware. The Dominion Military High Command will study the wreckage with interest." Lyra said nothing. These were the best the Federation could offer on short notice. Elite combat units, piloted remotely by veteran soldiers from a secure facility, half a system away. They had never lost a conventional engagement. They never stood a chance against Rulax. The apex predator moved with impossible speed, a blur of shadow that flowed between the mechs before they could establish a firing line. Its limbs reconfigured into blades that sheared through reinforced armor as if it were paper. Targeting systems failed as Rulax emitted precise electromagnetic pulses, calibrated to each mech's frequency. Within minutes, the arena floor was littered with the smoking ruins of 20 war machines. Not one had managed to land a significant hit on the Dominion champion. Mira had turned away, burying her face against Lyra's robes. "I don't want to watch this," she said. "You must," Talos insisted. "As symbolic champion, your presence and witness is required for the combat to be valid." Lyra glared at him. "She's a child." "She's the stake in this contest," Talos replied. "The Dominion has put forth its greatest asset. You have chosen to represent your claim with a child. The imbalance is notable." "We didn't choose anything," Lyra snapped. "You manipulated the negotiation into this outcome from the beginning." A cruel smile played at the corners of Talos's mouth. "Politics, Ambassador. You should understand the game by now." The announcer's voice boomed again. "Second wave of Federation champions, the beast tamers of Europa." This time, the arena doors revealed a different kind of force. 12 humans in specialized containment armor entered, each controlling massive genetically engineered predators through neural links. The beasts, part Earth Tiger, part European Ice Stalker, were the size of small shuttlecraft, with razor-sharp claws and multiple rows of serrated teeth. "Ah," Talos murmured. "The famous European combat bioforms. I've been looking forward to seeing them in action." Lyra had seen these creatures tear through Dominion shock troops during the border skirmishes 3 years ago. They were nearly unstoppable, regenerating damage at an incredible rate and attacking with coordinated pack tactics that could overwhelm even superior numbers. Against Rulax, they lasted 8 minutes longer than the mechs. The apex predator adapted its strategy seamlessly, analyzing the beast's attack patterns and exploiting the neural link between handlers and creatures. It targeted the humans first, severing the control connections and leaving the bioforms confused and vulnerable. Then, with methodical precision, it dismantled each beast, using weaknesses in their genetic makeup that even the Federation's scientists hadn't identified. The combat was brutal. By the end, the arena floor was slick with bioluminescent blood, and the crowd had worked itself into a frenzy of bloodlust. Mira was shaking now, tears streaming silently down her face. "Why are they doing this?" she whispered. "What's the point?" "Entertainment," Lyra said grimly. "And intimidation. The Dominion wants everyone in the galaxy to know the cost of opposing them." "But we'll lose everything. Those worlds, they're all we have left after the collapse." Lyra nodded, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. The resource worlds in dispute were humanity's best hope for recovery after the ecological disaster that had rendered Earth barely habitable. Dr. Voss had designed the biospheres specifically to support human life. Ironically, the very feature that made them so valuable to humanity made them nearly worthless to the Dominion, whose silicon-based biology required entirely different conditions. They wanted the worlds for strategic positioning, not for colonization. Millions of displaced humans would lose their future homes so the Dominion could establish military outposts and mining operations. "Final wave of Federation champions," the announcer proclaimed. "The elite quantum commandos." The last doors opened to reveal 50 soldiers in advanced combat suits that incorporated partial phase-shifting technology. They could momentarily step out of normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to hit and allowing them to bypass conventional defenses. Even Talos looked impressed. "Your Federation has committed significant resources to this contest. Ambassador, those suits cost more than most planetary defense systems." "We're fighting for our survival," Lyra replied. "What's the Dominion fighting for? Pride? Entertainment?" "Dominance," Talos said simply. "The natural order of the galaxy." Below, the quantum commandos executed a flawless attack strategy, phasing in and out of reality around Rulax, their specialized weapons actually managing to score hits against the apex predator's armor. For a brief moment, Lyra felt a surge of hope. It didn't last. Rulax adapted again, its sensory array recalibrating to detect the subtle distortions in space-time that preceded a commando's materialization. It began striking at empty air, points where soldiers would appear milliseconds later. The commandos fell one by one, their advanced technology rendered useless by the Predator's computational superiority. The last commando fought valiantly, managing to plant an antimatter charge directly on Rulax's chest plate before being impaled on a blade-like appendage. The resulting explosion temporarily obscured the Predator in a cloud of superheated plasma. When the smoke cleared, Rulax stood unscathed, the section of armor where the charge had detonated already regenerated. The crowd's cheering reached a new crescendo. Betting interfaces flashed across the arena's holographic displays, showing the odds of Rulax's victory approaching absolute certainty. "All of your champions have fallen," Talos observed unnecessarily. As is tradition, the symbolic champion must now acknowledge defeat in person. Lyra's heart froze. "What are you talking about? You said Mira was safe here." "Safe from harm, yes," Talos agreed. "But she must enter the arena to formally concede. It's a mere formality, a few moments in Rulax's presence to acknowledge the Dominion's victory." "Absolutely not," Lyra said, stepping in front of Mira protectively. "This was never part of the agreement. It is standard protocol in all arena contests," Talos insisted. Check your briefing materials. Ambassador. Section 47, Paragraph 9. Lyra activated her datapad with trembling fingers. The section Talos referenced was there, buried in legal terminology that her staff had flagged as ceremonial rather than substantive. A critical oversight. You can't seriously expect a child to stand before that thing, Lyra said, desperation creeping into her voice. The predator is fully controlled, Talos assured her, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It will not harm the symbolic champion during the concession. That would violate arena protocols. And if we refuse, then the contest is considered incomplete, and the Dominion reserves the right to resolve the territorial dispute by less ceremonial means. The threat of orbital bombardment hung unspoken in the air. Lyra knelt before Mira, looking into the girl's tear-streaked face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I've failed you and everyone counting on us." Mira wiped her eyes, leaving smears across her cheeks. "What happens if I go down there?" "You'll have to stand before Rulax and say a few words acknowledging the Dominion's claim to the disputed worlds. Then, you can return here, and we'll go home." The words tasted like ash in Lyra's mouth. "And if I don't? Then many people will die." Lyra couldn't bring herself to lie to the child. "The Dominion will attack our colonies directly." Mira's small shoulders straightened with a resolve that broke Lyra's heart. "Then I have to go." "Mira, you don't—" "I do," the girl interrupted. "My father would have done the same." Talos stepped forward. "A wise decision. The ceremony will be brief. Arena Surgeon Kale will escort you to ensure protocols are followed." As if on cue, the observation deck door opened again to admit a tall, slender figure in the distinctive white uniform of the arena's medical staff. Surgeon Kale had the typical Dominion features, silver-tinted skin and eyes with rectangular pupils, but lacked the augmentations many officials chose to display their status. His expression, as he surveyed the room, was unreadable. "The symbolic champion will follow me," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Ambassador, you may observe from here." Lyra fought back the urge to physically restrain Mira from leaving. "I'm coming with her." "Arena protocols forbid," Talos began. "Protocols be damned," Lyra cut him off. "She doesn't go alone. Or she doesn't go at all." A tense silence filled the observation deck. Finally, Kyle spoke. "The ambassador may accompany us to the arena entrance, but only the symbolic champion may step onto the combat floor. That is non-negotiable under Dominion law." Lyra nodded reluctantly. It was the best compromise she could hope for. As they followed Kale through the labyrinthine corridors beneath the arena, Lyra's mind raced, searching desperately for some way out of their predicament. The Dominion had outmaneuvered her at every turn, forcing her into accepting terms that put a child at risk and humanity's future in jeopardy. "Ambassador," Kyle said quietly as they approached the final doorway. "I feel I should inform you of something about Rulax." Lyra looked at him sharply. "What about it?" The Apex Predator's latest upgrade cycle included enhanced chemoreceptors, designed to analyze enemy biological responses: fear, aggression, desperation. It helps it anticipate combat moves. Kale's rectangular pupils dilated slightly. "The technology is more imperfect. Sometimes it responds to stimuli in unexpected ways." Before Lyra could ask what he meant, they reached the massive doors leading to the arena floor. "This is as far as you can go, Ambassador," Kale said. "The child must enter alone." Lyra knelt again before Mira. "You don't have to do this. We can find another way." Mira shook her head, her eyes red but dry now. "I'll be okay. It's just words, right? I say what they want and it's over." "Just words," Lyra agreed, her throat tight. "Remember what I told you about Dominion ceremonies. Be respectful, speak clearly, and keep your emotions controlled." Mira nodded solemnly. I'll make you proud. You already have, Lyra whispered, embracing her briefly before standing back. The massive doors slid open, revealing the vast expanse of the obsidian arena. Kale placed a gentle hand on Mira's shoulder, guiding her forward. Walk to the center circle. Rulax will approach. Recite the words that will appear on the holographic prompt. Nothing more is required. Mira stepped through the doorway, her small figure instantly dwarfed by the enormous space. The crowd fell into an expectant hush as she made her way across the debris-strewn floor, carefully picking her path through the wreckage of machines and bioforms. Above the arena, the announcer's voice boomed once more. The symbolic champion approaches to acknowledge defeat. The Dominion's claim shall be validated. Lyra watched, every muscle in her body tense, as Mira reached the center circle, a perfect disk of polished obsidian inlaid with pulsing red circuitry. On the opposite side of the arena, another door opened, and Rulax emerged. The apex predator moved with unsettling grace, covering the distance to the center circle in long, fluid strides. Up close, its true scale became apparent. It towered over Mira, more than twice her height, its armor absorbing light like a black hole. Holographic text appeared in the air between them, the concession speech Mira was expected to recite. Lyra could see the girl's shoulders trembling slightly as she drew breath to speak. But before Mira could utter a word, something unexpected happened. Rulax suddenly froze, its sensor array flaring from crimson to a pulsing amber. It tilted its featureless head, as if confused or reassessing. A ripple seemed to pass through its biomechanical frame. In the silence that followed, Lyra could hear the murmur of confusion spreading through the crowd. And then, to the astonishment of everyone watching, Rulax took a step backward, then another, its weapon systems, partially deployed in anticipation of the ceremony, retracted completely. Talos's voice crackled over Lyra's comm unit, sharp with alarm. What is happening? What have you done? Nothing, Lyra replied, as bewildered as he was. I don't understand. On the arena floor, Mira stood motionless, staring up at the retreating predator. A tear slid down her cheek, then another, the emotional strain of the moment finally overwhelming her careful composure. And that's when Lyra saw it. Rulax's sensor array flashing rapidly as it detected the tears. The chemical signature of human distress, triggering some unexpected response in its programming. Kale's words echoed in her mind. The technology is imperfect. Sometimes it responds to stimuli in unexpected ways. It's the tears, Lyra whispered, sudden understanding dawning. Rulax is responding to her tears. Below, the apex predator continued its retreat, moving back to the edge of the arena as if Mira's emotional display was a weapon more fearsome than any it had faced before. The announcer's voice, for the first time, sounded uncertain. The ceremony appears to be delayed. Please stand by for Dominion authorization. Lyra turned to Kale, who was watching the scene with an expression that might almost be satisfaction. What's happening to Rulax? As I mentioned, the chemoreceptors were designed to analyze enemy biological responses, Kale said quietly. What I didn't mention was that they were calibrated using Dominion biological templates. Our species does not produce tears. Ambassador, we have no equivalent to human lacrimal secretions. And, Lyra pressed, sensing there was more. And the components of human tears, the lysozyme, lactoferrin, lipocolin, and particularly the emotional markers present in psychic tears, as opposed to reflex tears. They create a biochemical signature that Rulax's systems cannot properly categorize. A ghost of a smile touched Kale's lips. In attempting to analyze this unknown chemical threat, the Predator's defense protocols have activated. It perceives the tears as a potential weapon and is programmed to retreat from unknown biological agents until they can be analyzed. On the arena floor, Dominion technicians had begun to emerge from access panels, rushing toward Rulax with diagnostic equipment. The crowd's murmuring had grown louder, with scattered boos and shouts of confusion. Talos appeared beside them, his exoskeleton whirring with the speed of his approach. "This is sabotage," he hissed. "You've interfered with the Predator's systems." "We've done nothing of the sort," Lyra replied, a strange calm settling over her. "Your champion is responding to a natural human biological function, one your engineers apparently failed to account for in their programming." "Impossible. Rulax has killed hundreds of humans without incident." "Adult humans," Kyle interjected. "Combat personnel trained to suppress emotional responses, not children experiencing acute distress." Talos glared at the surgeon. "You knew this would happen." Kale's expression remained neutral. "I am the arena's chief medical officer. My duty is to understand all biological interactions that may occur during combat. I simply informed the ambassador of a relevant feature of Rulax's design." Meanwhile, the technicians surrounding Rulax were growing visibly frustrated. One approached Talos, bowing deeply before speaking. "High Arbiter, we cannot override the Predator's retreat protocol. Its biochemical analysis subroutines have classified the human's tiers as a Class 1 biological threat due to unknown components. The safety parameters prevent engagement until analysis is complete." "Then complete the analysis," Talos snapped. "We cannot, High Arbiter. The emotional markers in psychic tiers are too complex for our current technology to fully decode. The human brain produces combinations of adrenocorticotropic hormone and other compounds that vary based on emotional states we do not fully understand." Talos turned to Lyra, fury evident in every line of his augmented body. "This changes nothing, Ambassador. The combat was already decided. Your champions were defeated." "Were they?" Lyra asked, confidence growing by the second. "The arena protocols state that combat continues until either all champions are defeated, or the opposing champion concedes, or is incapacitated. Rulax has retreated. By your own rules, that constitutes a withdrawal from combat." "A temporary technical malfunction," Talos insisted, "not a concession." "Then, by all means, fix your champion and resume the combat," Lyra challenged. "But understand that if you do, you admit that your ultimate weapon, your undefeated apex predator, is vulnerable to a 12-year-old girl's tears. Is that the message the Dominion wishes to send to the galaxy?" The observation deck fell silent as Talos processed this implication. His metallic fingers flexed and contracted in what Lyra recognized as a gesture of extreme agitation. Finally, the High Arbiter activated his comm unit. "Announcer, declare the combat void on technical grounds. The territorial dispute will be resolved through alternative means." Lyra stepped forward. "No, it will not. The Dominion insisted on trial by combat as the final, binding resolution to this conflict. You cannot void the results simply because they are not to your liking." "The combat was compromised," Talos countered. "By your champion's own limitations." Lyra pressed her advantage. "Nothing in the arena protocols prohibits tiers. High Arbiter, your predator retreated of its own accord, responding to its programming. By the Dominion's own laws of combat, that constitutes defeat." The arena's announcement system crackled to life again. "Attention! By order of the Dominion High Command, this combat is declared complete." A new voice interrupted. All heads turned to see a figure standing in the doorway, a Dominion elder. Her exoskeleton more elaborate than Talos's, decorated with the insignia of the High Command itself. "Commander Vex," Talos acknowledged, bowing deeply. "I was just explaining to the ambassador that we must void this compromised combat and arrange alternative resolution." Vex's ancient eyes surveyed the scene before her, the retreating predator, the confused crowd, the small human girl still standing alone in the center circle. I have reviewed the arena footage and the Predator's diagnostic data, Vex said, her voice carrying the weight of final authority. Rulax's retreat was triggered by its own systems responding as programmed to an unexpected stimulus. There was no external tampering or violation of protocol. But Commander, Talos began. Vex silenced him with a gesture. The Dominion of Steel built its empire on the principle that superior strength prevails. Today, we have discovered a limit to our strength, one we did not anticipate. That is valuable data. High Arbiter. More valuable, perhaps, than 3 resource worlds. She turned to Lyra. The combat is complete. Ambassador. By Dominion law, the symbolic champion's biological response constitutes a valid combat strategy that incapacitated our champion. The disputed worlds are awarded to the Federation. Lyra struggled to maintain diplomatic composure in the face of this unexpected victory. The Federation appreciates the Dominion's adherence to its own principles. Commander. Vex nodded. Honor is maintained through consistency. Ambassador. Remember that the next time our civilizations come into conflict. She turned to leave, then paused. And we will come into conflict again. The Dominion does not forget defeat. After the commander departed, Talos remained rigid with suppressed rage. This isn't over, Ambassador. The High Command may accept this outcome, but there are many in the Dominion who will not. Then, perhaps it's time for both our peoples to develop better ways of resolving disputes, Lyra suggested. Ways that don't involve putting children at risk, or creating biological weapons that can turn on their masters. She left him without waiting for a response, hurrying onto the arena floor where Mira still stood, looking small, but somehow taller than before. You did it, Lyra said, embracing the girl tightly. You saved the worlds. Mira looked up at her, tears still wet on her cheeks. I didn't do anything. I just got scared. Sometimes vulnerability is the greatest strength, Lyra told her. Your father would be incredibly proud of you today. As they walked from the arena, the crowd's reaction was mixed. Confusion, anger from some Dominion citizens, but also a strange, respectful silence from others. The betting interfaces had frozen, calculations unable to process the unprecedented outcome. Surgeon Kale met them at the exit. The Federation transport is ready to take you home, Ambassador. Thank you, Lyra said sincerely, for everything. Kale's rectangular pupils contracted briefly. I did nothing but observe biological reactions, Ambassador, as any good surgeon must. He hesitated, then added, Rulax will be reprogrammed, of course. The Dominion cannot allow such a vulnerability to persist. What will happen to it? Mira asked unexpectedly. The technical team is already recalibrating its response protocols, Kale said. But the core programming has been fundamentally altered by today's events. The neural pathways that process chemical signals have formed new connections. In essence, it has learned something new. What has it learned? Lyra asked. That not all threats are aggressive, Kale replied. That some beings require protection rather than destruction. The technicians are calling it a malfunction, but others might see it as an evolution. As they boarded the transport that would take them back to Federation space, Lyra reflected on the day's events. The Dominion had sought to demonstrate its power through an unstoppable predator, only to discover that even the most perfect weapon had unforeseen vulnerabilities. 3 weeks later, reports reached the Federation of changes in the Obsidian Arena. Rulax no longer fought as the apex predator. Instead, it had been repurposed as the Protector, a guardian that fought alongside weaker combatants against overwhelming odds. Arena spectators now wagered not on who would die, but on who would be saved. And in diplomatic circles throughout the galaxy, a new phrase entered negotiations between powerful and vulnerable worlds. Remember the tears. It was whispered as both warning and promise, that even the most fearsome force in the universe could be halted by the right kind of vulnerability. Mira Voss returned to her studies, focusing on her father's research with renewed purpose. The three resource worlds were developed as planned, becoming havens for displaced humanity. And, on each world, at Mira's insistence, a portion of the land was set aside as wilderness, places where predators and prey could find their natural balance without interference. She named these preserves Rulax sanctuaries, though few understood the reference. When asked why, she would smile and say simply, "Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing can become the most protective, if it learns to recognize tears." Ambassador Lyra continued her diplomatic career, becoming known for a negotiation style that balanced strength with strategic vulnerability. She never again accepted trial by combat, but she kept a small vial of synthesized human tears in her diplomatic pouch, a reminder that power came in many forms, and the most unexpected weakness could become the greatest strength. And somewhere in the depths of the Dominion's research facilities, the being once known as the apex predator continued its evolution, its programming slowly reconciling aggression with protection, destruction with preservation. Its sensors, once calibrated only to detect threats, now registered a broader spectrum of biological responses, including those that signaled not danger, but the need for compassion. In the endless game of galactic politics, a new variable had been introduced, one that neither human nor Dominion strategists had anticipated. The mathematics of power had been rewritten by a child's tears, proving that even in a universe that celebrated strength, there remained space for vulnerability to change the equation. The obsidian arena still stood on Nexus Prime, its dark surfaces reflecting the light of 3 artificial suns. But those who fought there now carried a new awareness, that victory could come not just from defeating an enemy, but from awakening something unexpected within them. And in the diplomatic chambers across the galaxy, negotiators remembered that sometimes the most powerful weapon was not a show of strength, but a moment of genuine emotion that revealed the truth no one had been willing to see. For Mira Voss, who had stood face to face with the ultimate predator and watched it back away from her tears, the lesson was simpler, that even monsters could learn to recognize pain, and in recognizing it, find themselves transformed. Her father had died, trying to create new worlds where humanity could thrive. She had saved those worlds by showing that humanity's apparent weakness, its emotional nature, could be its greatest strength. And in the quiet moments, when the political implications and strategic advantages were set aside, that was the story that mattered. How the most fearsome creation of an empire built on strength had been stopped not by superior firepower or clever tactics, but by the simple, unplanned tears of a child who grieved for all that had been lost and feared all that might still be taken away. It was a story the Dominion would spend decades trying to rewrite, and one the Federation would never allow to be forgotten.